Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn, and I'm coming to you today with a thrilling week of books. I'm so happy this week because serendipity happened, and even though this is March Mystery Madness and I do have some mysteries for you, I also was introduced to many other books that were unexpected. So let me start with the mysteries that I read. First of all, there's one mystery that I'm not going to talk about. Well, there's two that I'm not going to talk about. One I'm almost finished with, and the other one was a real dud. I might do a rant video, or I might not even talk about it. But let me start with the good. And this is a book that I talked about on my recreation of the series by Janelle of Too Fond of Books, and that's Some Lie and Some Die. So many of you who watch my channel have seen this series that I'm recreating, so I'm not going to talk about this too much. Just say what I haven't said in the video, and I'll put that down below. I think it's going to be the last video that I made, so you can see that easily. But I forgot to tell you some things about it when I did that short video. So like I said, this is like a Woodstock-like festival in a small town, Kensington. I think it's called Kensington. Well, it's on a sprawling English estate called Sundays in the small town that Wexford lives in, Inspector Wexford. So it's an Inspector Wexford novel. And it's delightful, I said, on many different levels. I recommend it highly. It's the kind of psychological mystery that I like, which is really heavy on the psychological level and not as high on the gory level. But one thing I forgot to say is take a look at a young Ruth Rendel. Does she not look like Dusty Springfield? I was amazed, and I said, wow, because in the back of books of Ruth Rendel's Inspector Wexford, you only see her as an older woman, and now, you know, here she is in the 70s at her highest of talent, and yeah, she looks so good. So anyway, I forgot to show you that when I did Some Lie and Some Die by Ruth Rendel, which I highly recommend. The other mystery I read with Nathan, a subscriber, and a wonderful reviewer of books as well. And we read a Maigret, George Simenon book. And this is Maigret and the Madwoman. Let me see if you can see this. It's a pretty nice cover, and it's a pretty new book. So what is this about? Basically, the Madwoman is an old woman who practically stalks Maigret. She has a high opinion of him, but he's high and he's an inspector, so she has a hard time getting in touch with him. She only wants to speak to him. She finally speaks to his younger lieutenant, and she says that she has a feeling that she's going to be murdered. So they sort of discount her. She's mad, she's old, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Yet, when she finally does get to speak to Maigret, he notices that she doesn't look like she's mad. I don't like to use the word crazy, but that's what they were saying. She's like touched, or she's old, she has Alzheimer's, though I'm sure they never used it. What I loved about this book, part of it takes place in a closed circle mystery, which is one of my favorite type of mysteries. Not so much the thrillers that are closed circle, though sometimes I like them, but the mysteries that are closed circle, like Agatha Christie's famous mystery, And Then There Were None. This takes place partly in an apartment building, and I noticed that George Simenon likes to place a lot of his mysteries, at least starting out in these old apartment buildings that people live in and never really get to know their neighbors, because that's the French kind of way. And so it starts out that way. And I don't want to tell you too much about the mystery, except to say that it has everything I love in a mystery. There's a night train to the French Riviera. There's the cold glasses of rosé wine when they're there. There's the petty crooks that they find. There's a satisfying end, which is not always true in Simeon's books. There's food. Let's not forget food. And there's Mrs. Maigret, Madame Maigret, and her quiet but very commanding presence in his books. And in this book, as in other books, she gives him some advice without giving him advice, which I love. I just love. And I just love the ending of this book, which is not always the case in any book for me. It's really hard to do endings. Anyway, I recommend this highly. 5 stars. Okay, so that's all of the mysteries for my first week of March Mystery Madness. But I have other books. Now, I did a short on Nemesis, and I'll have that down below. I did talk rather fast, and I don't know if that was a good thing. I was trying to get everything in 1 minute. So what is this about? This is Philip Roth's last book, and I believe it's a masterpiece in the sense of the writing, first of all. I had never read a Philip Roth book. He's the infamous writer, as I said, of Portney's Complaint, which I never read, but of course we heard about it. And this is about something completely different. This is, or maybe it does have some of the same things that are in all of Philip Roth's book. Somebody who's Jewish, somebody who has is guilt-ridden. So that part is maybe similar to Portney's Complaint, or what I heard about it. But this has to do with the polio outbreak. And this touched me personally because I was brought up or born during the time when polio was a very dangerous illness to get for children. It was called infantile paralysis, and people died from it, children and adults. In fact, I had a teacher who was in a wheelchair because she had survived by being in what they used to call an iron lung. And she wasn't privy to the time when the vaccination was available, and none of these children were. So I found out later that there really wasn't an outbreak in 1944 in Newark, New Jersey, but it was actually, there was one in the 50s, and I was born in the 50s, and I was very fortunate enough to have my mother take me to the Department of Health, which is mentioned a lot in this book, because poor people in the 40s and 50s, they depended on the Department of Health during outbreaks of all kinds of diseases. So, though this is about polio, it's also about Bucky Cantor, who's a playground director and suffers from a lot of guilt because he was 4F during World War II, so he couldn't fight. And this affects the way he reacts during this whole book. And it has to do with war, it has to do with the disease, it has to do with so many things, and written so beautifully. So I didn't give this quite 5 stars. I didn't like the ending that much, and there was some problematic things in the book. But I gave it 4 stars. I might read another book of Philip Roth, though I'm not sure if I'm going to do it right away. And let me just say that these books I was very lucky that I went to this very small library sale last month, the beginning of last month, and picked up some books that there wasn't much variety, but I picked up some books that I probably would have not picked up if maybe they had more of the books that I was actually actively looking for. But I'm so glad, because I came up with more than a few books that I talked about in other videos. And one of those books that I talked about in another short was, and I talked about it also beside the short, I talked about it in the last video, Oleanna, which was a Pulitzer Prize winning author of Glengarry Glen Ross. And that's why I picked it up, because I had seen the movie and loved the movie, loved the words, and loved this book. And I won't talk about it anymore. It's basically it's about gender relationships and professor and student relationships. And we hear so much of that in today's news. And this was written in the 90s. So I highly recommend Oleanna. I talked about it before. I did a short of it, so I'm not going to talk about that again. And what else was in that library haul? 3 Men in a Boat. I haven't got to it yet, but I've had such good luck with that library haul that I definitely am going to read 3 Men in a Boat, to say nothing of The Dog by Jerome K. Jerome. But I can't talk about it now because I haven't read it. But I'm so excited to read it because I've had such good luck with the books from that book sale. Now I want to talk to you about a book, some books that I got from a book that Nathan sent me on Kindle called Book Lust. I'll try to find a copy. If I find a copy of it, I'll put it over here. And the author, I'll put that over here too. And I think she's a librarian, which, makes it wonderful. I didn't love every book that she recommended. I heard there's another book called Book Lust 2. But I found 2 gems that I wanted to speak to you about because I am so in love with these 2 books. The first book was a movie that I saw, and it's a movie cover, To Sir with Love. I didn't know it was a book until I read it in Book Lust. It's written by E.R. Braithwaite. And here is the cover with Sidney Poitier, who I feel did a wonderful job in this book. It's about so much. If you ever saw To Sir with Love, Petula Clark sings the song, and the story was very heartwarming in the movie. But the book, I encourage you highly to read the book because there's so much more in the book that was left out of the movie. Okay, so what is it about? Basically, it's about being black in Britain after the war. And here is a man who was an RAF officer, is educated, but he was barred from all the jobs that he was qualified for just because he was black. And he has a lot to say. This is a memoir, by the way. He has a lot to say about what it means to be black in Britain at that time and how different it was from being maybe black in America, whereas the prejudice here is more subtle and more polite, if prejudice can be polite. So he was eminently qualified to be an engineer, I think it was, but every job that he went for after, feeling more or less equal when he was in the RAF because they were all there to fight the enemy, and he didn't feel so much prejudice until he went back to Britain. And so he's a cultivated man, and he goes to a special school where they believe in treating ill-mannered children as adults, not beating them like was the style at that time. And he has a challenge, and he's going to use all his skills, all of his goodness that he has, to fight the prejudice. Because even in this school that's run a little differently, it's still in a very poor neighborhood in the East End of London. If you know the movie, that's what it's about. And his relationship with his students. I have to say, there's a part in here that made me cry unexpectedly. And I said, I love this man. I want to look him up. I want to see if he wrote any other books. And I'm not talking about Sidney Poitier, who I loved as an actor, but I'm talking about E.R. Braithwaite, who actually was that teacher in this school, and how his relationship with his students was the most beautiful relationship of a teacher and students that I think I've ever read. I recommend this highly. Even if you've watched the movie, read the book, To Sir with Love. You will love it. I'm sure you will. So then, between dipping into and out of mysteries, which I love, and I'm very happy to be co-hosting March Mystery Madness. I'm very busy trying to make as many videos as I can, but there was also a book waiting for me at the library, and it was in large print. And let me just tell you, I've never read anything about this author before. I've heard of her, and I read this all in one night last night, and it's called A Far Cry from Kensington, and the author is Muriel Spark. She's a Scottish writer who I've heard of. She wrote The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which was a movie that I think I saw many, many years ago, though I didn't read the book. This book kept me enthralled. So what is it about? Basically, it's about a woman. So the narrator is a woman. Let me see what I wrote down here. Her name is Mrs. Hawkins. She's a war widow, and she's the narrator. And it starts out as her having a type of insomnia where she wakes up, or she's not sleeping, and she's thinking about her past, where she was a young war widow. And so she has this sort of insomnia, and she leads us back from her threadbare life in Kensington, which was a very poor existence in what was to become a very expensive area later on. But this is right after the war. And she's a wonderful narrator, both the author and Mrs. Hawkins. We find out what her name is later, Nancy, but she's quite huge. She's a huge woman, young woman, and she's treated differently because of that. She's treated as if she knows everything, and she seems to know a lot anyway. And during the course of the novel, she loses weight, but she loses and she gains an enemy, and that's sort of the plot of the story. Though there's so much more. This is a book about books too, which I love. She's a copy editor. She works for a publishing company. She actually works for like 3 publishing companies. And this also takes place in a rooming house in Kensington. So it has that also has a mystery in it. It has this closed circle of people living together in quite a different way than they lived together in Maigret's Paris. They live together cheek to jowl and get into each other's business in a lot of different ways. So it's almost like the opposite, but yet it's just a wonderful book. I recommend it. I want to read everything by Muriel Spark. So there's shady literary doings. Also, I wanted to say that she gives a lot of interesting insight to the publishing world and to writing books in general. And I think that's the author talking. I didn't give it 5 stars, and I'll tell you why. You have to understand that this was written, now let me see when it was written, not as early as I thought, not in the 50s, that's for sure. It was written in 1988. So I couldn't overlook that there was some pettiness toward homosexuality, toward gayness at the time. Not totally, there was not hate, but there was a little bit of cattiness written by the author, as well as what it means to have a child out of wedlock, and also what it means to have an abortion. And you have to understand that this is a Scottish book, and she even said at the time of after the war, to be gay was illegal. And I think to have an abortion was also illegal and very dangerous. But it was also, there's a lot of religion mixed up into it too. So I didn't want to really blame the author that much, because you have to look at the circumstances of the writing. And this is the first book that I've read. I give it a 4.5 star. The ending wasn't wonderful, but it is considered, she wrote short, dark comedies mixed with reality. So, and I said in another video, in my last video, in fact, that I don't get along with dark comedy that much. But in the totality of the book, I want to read her whole, every book she wrote. What is the word? Oeuvre? I want to read it all. Anyway, I hope to be around a lot this month, more than usual. So if you like this video, please subscribe and comment and tell me, have you read any of these books? Whether they be a mystery, whether it be Muriel Sparks, whether it be To Serve with Love, whether it be Maigret and the Madwoman, whether it be Ruth Rendel, or Philip Roth. Let me know. Or Mamet. Let me know in the comments what do you want to read any of these books? Have you read any of these books? Let me know in the comments. On Monday, I'm going to do another one of Murder Mystery Monday in honor of Janelle. And I'm finding that Janelle and I, we had similar fondness of books. I say fondness because that was her. Please check out her channel, Too Fond of Books, because she is the queen of mystery, and I miss her so much. We all do, people who read mysteries. And I'm going to try for the next 3 weeks to read a book that I think she would enjoy. But if I go on after the 3 weeks, I'm not sure yet. I haven't had that much interest in it yet, that many comments on my Mystery Mondays. But if I go on, I'm going to talk about books that I like more than what she liked, because some of our tastes kind of don't gel with a certain type of book. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this interesting to me. I guess it's a Friday Reads, or it's a March Mystery Madness video. So I'm sending you, I hope you're all doing well. Yesterday, just as an aside, I walked up a hill to my dentist and found out I have 2 cavities and a cracked tooth. But when I was walking uphill, I was listening to the birds. I haven't been out for almost 2 weeks, a variety of reasons. And it was so wonderful to be able to exercise my body, look at nature in Hawaii. And even though I had not wonderful news, I got a cleaning. And that's always good. So until we meet again in the next video, I'm going to send you a lot of aloha. And until next time, bye.